Please welcome to the stage ASHE 2023 Conference Wellness Committee co-chairs Drs. Liza, Talusan, and Amy Collinsworth.
Hello and good morning. My name is Amy Collinsworth and I use she, her pronouns. I'm a white woman with glasses wearing a blazer. I'm a doctoral candidate and staff member in the Department of Leadership and Education at the University of Massachusetts, Boston. This week, we are engaging in learning, sharing, and reflecting about our responsibility for examining higher education's purpose, policies, and practices. This conference is taking place on the traditional ancestral homeland of the Dakota people, the original inhabitants and stewards of the land and waterways of Minneapolis, Minnesota. As we learn together, it is important that we connect and uplift the knowledge and community of the people of this land.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Liza Talusan. I use she, her pronouns. I'm an Asian American woman of Filipino descent with short black hair and wearing a brightly patterned dress. I'm an associate instructor at the University of Massachusetts, Boston in the master's and doctoral programs in education and a strategic partner for schools across the globe as they create meaningful change for equity and anti-racism. This year, as members of the conference committee leadership team and co-chairs of the Wellness Committee, Amy and I were invited to think about how to improve the work related to wellness at ASHE. We envisioned an environment at ASHE where participants are able to engage in a holistic approach to wellness, including issues of mental, physical, emotional, environmental, professional, and community wellness, particularly through a more accessible and inclusive lens.
Using this holistic approach to wellness, we are continuing the tradition of signature events at ASHE, such as the ASHE Dash and ASHE Yoga, while ensuring that these experiences are designed for participants of all levels of interest and ability. We also created some opportunities to engage in time-out experiences from the conference, including a sensory room, which is open to participants who need a place to take a break from some of the noise and energy of the conference, and a prayer and mindfulness room. We also included opportunities to make connections this week, such as name tag stickers that prompt you to ask me about, so feel free to ask me about dancing or The Real Housewives if you're a Bravo fan. Let's see. Oh, and also we had a great session yesterday called a Chat and Chill where we talked about healthy and loving writing spaces. Did I miss something? Sorry, I got too excited about the housewives and dancing. I gotta. All right, here we go. This is really important because we're thanking our committee. We're so fortunate to work with an incredible committee, especially Dr. Chinasa Elowe, who is facilitating a session right after this keynote to explore our experiences with grief and loss in academia. We invite you to check out this and other sessions on the schedule. We also want you to know that we're thinking about accessibility of finding these different activities. So all of the wellness sessions are physically marked with heart icon signs throughout the conference. Liza and I hope that you are able to engage in this year's conference in ways that protect your energy and honor personal and community wellness.
Thank you to our committee members, Chinasa Elowe, Christina Hall-Michel, Kanisha Harrington, Rashawn Knowles, and Sara Nino, who have graciously given their time to create an inclusive wellness experience here at ASHE 2023. If there are any committee members here in the room, we just ask that you stand or raise your hand so we can just acknowledge your labor here at the conference. Thank you. Thanks. At the University of Massachusetts, Boston, a community of which we are both a part of, there's been an intentional commitment to focus on wellness. This semester, the UMass Boston Beacon Wellness Initiative was launched to amplify the health and well-being of all and focuses on holistic approaches to wellness. The initiative promises to strengthen coordination of health promotion efforts across the university for the benefit of all, students, faculty, staff, the community, and especially those who face persistent barriers to adequate health services and wellness opportunities. And this initiative is led by our Chancellor and our speaker for today, Dr. Marcelo Suárez-Orozco.
Chancellor Marcelo Suárez-Orozco assumed the role of Chancellor at the University of Massachusetts, Boston on August 1st, 2020. Prior to coming to UMass Boston, Chancellor Suárez-Orozco served as the inaugural UCLA Wasserman Dean, leading 2 academic departments, 16 nationally renowned research institutes, and 2 innovative demonstration schools in UCLA's Graduate School of Education and Information Studies. His research focuses on cultural psychology and psychological anthropology with an emphasis on education, globalization, and migration. An immigrant from Argentina, Dr. Suárez-Orozco is a product of the California Master Plan, having studied in community college and at the University of California, Berkeley, where he received his AB, MA, and PhD in anthropology.
In his address, Dr. Suárez-Orozco will draw upon his personal history and expertise to explore the connection between this year's conference theme and his expertise to uncover insights applicable to the field of higher education. Thank you to the UMass Boston College of Education and Human Development for their sponsorship of this event. As co-chairs of the inaugural ASHE Conference Wellness Committee and as UMass Boston Go Beacons community members, it is our privilege to introduce and invite to the stage Dr. Marcelo Suárez-Orozco.
Good morning. I'm so delighted to join you for this beautiful and important gathering. The topic of my presentation this morning is the topic of immigrant students in higher education. Migration is an ancient human adaptation. Viewed anthropologically, migration is written in our genome and encoded in our bodies, in our bipedalism, in our stereoscopic vision, in our central nervous system. Migration is constitutive of the human experience. Modern humans are the children of immigration. In the modern era, migrations are complex, multi-determined, and escape vulgar mechanisms of causality. Migrations unfold in complex ecologies, including broad features of the state, sovereignty, borders, but also demography, economy, and society. Furthermore, colonial, historical relations, cultural affinities, political interests, and the environment itself now continue to carve the pathways of the great human migrations of our era. Today, all continents are involved in the massive movements of peoples as areas of immigration, emigration, transit, and return, and often all four at once. In the 21st century, mass migration is the human face of globalization. The sounds, colors, aromas of a miniaturized, interconnected, and ever fragile world. In this presentation, I am grateful that I am able to first share some new data on today's migration flows and a reflection on the new drivers of mass migrations. Then I will turn to a neglected scholarly domain, immigrant students in higher education. My reflections are, by necessity, as they always are, even when unstated, by my own experiences as a young man who journeyed from Latin America to the United States 5 decades ago by myself, alone, with very little, but ganas. The number of international migrants worldwide reached over 282 million in 2022. That is up from 220 million in 2010 and 175 million in the year 2000. The largest international corridors of human movement in the world today are in Asia, Europe, and the Americas. By the year 2020, the largest numbers of international migrants, well over 50 million, resided in the United States, followed by Germany, Saudi Arabia, the Russian Federation, and the UK. India is the largest country of origin for international immigrants, people leaving their country, followed by Mexico. Today, women comprise almost half of all international migrants. Over the last 4 generations, a general pattern came to define the world's best traveled migration corridors: love and work. Labor migration begat family reunification as the main driver of human movements, which in turn begat the rise of the second generation as the defining feature in the field of immigration today. And therein lies the matter before us in higher education. 4 disparate formations laid the foundations for an emerging new cartography of mass migration. First, the dismemberment of the Soviet Union and the end of the Cold War significantly accelerated human migrations. Second, the worldwide economic crisis of 2008 and the anti-government uprisings in North Africa and the Middle East in the 2010s, the so-called Arab Spring. Am I going too fast? Signaling a new turn. Third, the former president of the United States and his moves to make good on campaign promises that elected him, rapidly stepping up deportations of our unauthorized immigrants, promising to build a 2,000-mile wall along the Mexican border, halting Syrian and other refugees from Muslim countries from entering the United States, marked a transformational turning point in the global migration landscape. In the same vein, Brexit and the concurrent rise of nativist, xenophobic, anti-immigrant movements in the European Union, in the Americas, and elsewhere marks the beginning of a new cartography of mass migration. Fourth, the global pandemic brought migration to a screeching halt and put settled migrants, especially in the high-income countries, in extremely vulnerable contexts. Today, mass migrations are increasingly defined by growing global inequality, war, and terror, unchecked climate change, and growing demographic imbalances. Symbiotically, these forces are the new drivers of what I have called the catastrophic migrations of the 21st century. With unchecked climate change, the very fabric of life on Earth is at grave risk. Human beings, especially in the high-income countries of the world, are creating a new, dangerous phase of Earth's history, the so-called Anthropocene. The term refers to the immense effects of human activity on all aspects of Earth's physical systems and on all life on the planet. We are dangerously warming the planet, leaving behind the climate in which civilizations first emerge. With accelerating climate change, we are risking massive crop failures, heat extremes, droughts, megastorms, floods, and sharply rising sea levels. In the United States today, every 3 weeks, we now have a catastrophic climate event, each costing, on average, over $1 billion in destruction. The economic activities that contribute to global warming are also wreaking profound damages, including air and water pollution, deforestation, massive land degradation, causing a rate of species extinction unprecedented for the last 65 million years of life on Earth. These changes are also creating dire threats to human health through new and re-emerging infectious diseases, increases in heart disease, stroke, pulmonary disease, cancer, and mental health. That is what decarbonation of the atmosphere is delivering. Climate change is becoming a major driver and will continue to exacerbate the current unprecedented flow of forcefully displaced people around the world. Keep in mind that today, only 1 in 100 folk seeking refuge will make it to the higher income countries of the North. 1 in 100. The vast majority of forcibly displaced folk will remain within the confines of their own countries or will be pushed over into neighboring regions. Most Africans stay in Africa. Most Asians stay in Asia. Most Latin Americans stay in Latin America. The face of human migration in the 21st century is a youthful phase. In the United States, immigrant origin youth now make the fastest growing student population. Nationwide, 26% of all children and a third of all young adults have at least one immigrant parent. This is part of a dynamic in the higher income countries of the world. Our neighbor to the north, Canada, 34% of youth between the ages of 14 and 24 are of immigrant origin. In Germany, 40% of the children, sorry. In Germany, 40% of the children that woke up this morning in Berlin to go to school, 40%, 40, come from non-German, immigrant, and refugee origin homes. This is not your grandpa's Berlin. In Sweden, to the Swedish Americans here in Minnesota, in Sweden, 40% of the children that woke up this morning to go to the Stockholm schools come from immigrant and refugee origin homes. Not your grandpa's Sweden either. As such, immigrant origin youth are now and will continue to be a diverse and demographically critical segment of students in our country and beyond. Census data analyzed and jointly released by the Migration Policy Institute and the President's Alliance at my home institution of UMass Boston, Go Beacons, suggests that 31%, 31, of all students enrolled in higher education are of immigrant origin. While enrollment for the US majority population is declining, that's not news to anyone, immigrant origin students account for 80% of the increase in higher education enrollment over the last 2 decades. What do we know about their complex identities, their extraordinary journeys, and how to best serve them? Immigrant origin students are highly diverse in terms of national origins, race, religion, ethnicity, language, education, and socioeconomic status. Yet, there are shared experiences shaping their educational trajectories across a multiplicity of contexts. Immigrant origin students are part of the domestic student population in the United States and include both first generation, those of us who were born abroad, and second generation immigrants, born in the United States to one or more immigrant parents. Immigrant origin students are distinct from the nearly million students who are international, who are foreign-born, and enrolled in coursework at accredited degree-granting higher education institutions in the United States on a temporary non-immigrant visa. According to Carola Suárez-Orozco, no relation really, Suárez-Orozco is like Smith in English. According to Carola Suárez-Orozco of the Harvard School of Education, there are 5.6 million immigrant origin students who have grown up in immigrant-headed families. 3.8 million are US born, while another 1.9 million plus are foreign born, the first generation. These students are typically enrolled for all or a significant portion of their K-12 educational experience in our schools here in the United States. Among the first generation, 44% are nationalized citizens, while 56% hold a complex array of immigration and legal statuses, including legal permanent residence, refugee status, temporary asylum status, dependents of temporary visa holders, temporary protected status, deferred action for childhood arrivals, DACA, as well as undocumented status. Together, the first and second generation immigrant students in higher education today account for an extraordinarily significant percentage of higher education enrollment in a number of states. 54% of all students in higher education in California are of immigrant origin, 47% in New York State, 45% in Florida, 44% in New Jersey. Also, they make up between 32 to 39% in an additional 9 states: Nevada, Texas, Arizona, Illinois, Hawaii, Washington, my own state of Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Maryland. In the face of real adversity, immigrant students demonstrate a repertoire of strengths and resiliences. Key among these attributes are their embodiment of hope, the enduring belief in a future that surpasses present circumstances, which emerges as a driving force in their pursuit of higher education and better life outcomes. This disposition is further enhanced by the so-called immigrant dual frame of reference, endowing them with perspective-taking to make sense in their phenomenology of experience in ways that are more complex, fueling flexibility, optimism, and a positive attitude towards higher education. Immigrant origin students are highly diverse. In the eternal poetry of Pablo Neruda, the poet of intersectionality before intersectionality, somos muchos. I think that's what Walt Whitman meant when he said, I contradict myself. I contain multitudes. Somos muchos. Muchos somos. Beautiful poem by Pablo Neruda, winner of the Nobel Prize and victim of a fascist assassination. Immigrant students in higher education share experiences with other underserved populations in our country, including racially, ethnically, and religiously minoritized populations and first-generation students. Immigrant origin students share experiences that flow from the migration journey. Yet, they still undergo very specific challenges rooted in their own structural predicaments, including liminal immigration status and/or refugee background and protections. It is incumbent on those of us who serve these students to understand their complexities, to better serve all students. Immigrant origin students hailing from the metaphoric global South, principally Asia, Latin America, and the Caribbean, as well as Africa, as they migrate, enter the sui generis U.S. racialization regime. Today, immigrant origin students are the engine driving the rapid diversification of our campuses. 88% of Asian American, 88% of Asian American, 68% of Latine, and 28% of Black students on campuses today come from immigrant families. As their families settle in the U.S., they become part of our country's pan-racial and ethnic regime. For the first generation growing up in immigrant households, they must navigate new currents, often without the benefits of the parental racial, ethnic socialization strategies relevant to a uniquely American context. Such experiences of racialization are often further compounded by the xenophobia that has now invaded every aspect of our economy and society. As students experience negative social interactions, structural barriers, and xenophobia, they're left wondering whether to attribute such experiences to colorism, racism, religious, linguistic supremacy, xenophobia, or some combination of exclusionary biases. Immigrant origin students are often first generation to college students. Further, even when their parents are college educated, some of the parental strategies for engagement may be entirely different in their home countries from US practices. Immigrant origin students, like first generation students, typically attend public colleges and most commonly enter the college system, as I did as a 17-year-old English language learner over 50 years ago when I arrived in the extraordinary California community college system. Because of a variety of reasons, including cost effectiveness, proximity to family, less than optimal high school experiences, and for the first generation to college, like myself, it is often an opportunity to focus on English language skills. For first and second generation students, the migration journey shapes family dynamics. Immigrant families today must manage family separations and losses, status demotions and promotions, new racial and gender regimes, new complicated acculturation pathways, while endeavoring to develop, to hold hybrid identities, to forge pathways to belonging among very complex economic and political challenges. For many, many immigrant origin students, a language other than English is often spoken at home. And that is a huge asset. In the compulsory regime of monolingualism in our country, we need to let the notion of multilingualism flow from our neural pathways to the practices we embody to better serve all students. For first-generation immigrants, this means that often during childhood, they are thrust into new educational contexts while learning a second, and through our research in both children, reported in both Children of Immigration and Learning a New Land with Carola, we discover that this youth often learn a second, a third, a fourth language on their way to learning English. Students designated as English learners, depending upon the states where they settle, the schools, the districts they attend, and the services available, often end up on academic tracks that leave them playing academic catch-ups. So how do we get from what the great Patricia Gándara at UCLA calls the bilingual advantage to this framework of deficiency, this framework of not having? How is it that we are not engaging the extraordinary advantages that flow from linguistic and cultural bicameralism and end up in a framework of less done? As immigrant students grow up in immigrant families, often they acquire skills, all kinds of skills, cultural, cognitive, metacognitive, linguistic. In the day in and day out labor of working with their parents on an entire translational set of family obligations and responsibilities. Translational frameworks, a whole variety of them, shown to foster cognitive flexibility, psychosocial perspective-taking, and workplace skills. Furthermore, a sense of familial responsibility, duty, often carries on beyond childhood as immigrant origin students in higher education struggle family responsibilities, obligations, as they pursue their dream of a higher education degree. While this is surely a labor of love, it is distracting, but it also drives, most often, determination. Immigrant origin students are also our research and the research of others have shown, more likely to pursue academic pathways in the, let's call it, giving back, in the ethic of care domains of social service. Two specific immigrant groups bear particular attention: students with liminal documentation statuses and our refugee students. Liminal statuses are an issue that we need to reflect upon, while the second generation are still in our country by birthright citizens. A swath of first-generation students are navigating liminal statuses that subject them to fewer educational opportunities, as well as a culture of uncertainty and fear. An estimated 56% of first-generation immigrant origin students are non-citizens. While some hold legal permanent residence, many others are asylum seekers, dependents of temporary visa holders, recipients of Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, DACA, or Temporary Protected Status, TPS, or simply undocumented. Over the last 3 decades, dystopia in our government and a deadlock preventing our country from addressing comprehensive immigration reform. Generations of young people who arrived as young children without documentation are now entering higher education. These students have been educated in the US K-12 system, still as ensured by the Plyler v. Doe Supreme Court decision. And when I say still, birthright, or Plyler v. Doe, I'm addressing the fragility of these protections, the fragility of these protections. Today, these students who arrived without documentation account for roughly 1 in 50 college students in our country. These students face wicked, wicked challenges, beginning with a steep financial penalty they face as they enter higher education. They have no access to federal financial aid. In many states, undocumented students are charged out-of-state tuition rates and have no support from state financial aid. 23 states, as well as the District of Columbia, do allow in-state tuition to their undocumented students, and 17 of these states also provide access to state financial aid. But several states, I have to note, only provide access to in-state tuition for DACA recipients. Today, most students entering our higher education institutions are no longer eligible for DACA, as new applications have been blocked in the courts since 2017. While approximately 141,000 college students are DACA eligible, today, well over 400,000 students in our higher education institutions are undocumented. Many campuses, however, still think of this group of students as having the protections of DACA. That is not the case. These students do not have access in many states to so many of the necessary scaffolds flowing from federal, state aid options. And they also live in a culture of fear with deeply, deeply rooted concerns about life, their own, that of their loved ones, and their work options after graduation. Further, undocumented students today swim against a powerful undertow, threatening to drown them. They live with a host of psychosocial and educational challenges unique to their situations. Chronic uncertainty about the future affect the lived realities, particularly uncertainty about future options, as well as the ever-present fear of deportation. Financial precarities require that they work often under the table to pay for their education, basic living expenses, as well as to help support their families. In too many campuses, they are invisible and provided only minimal or erratic supports. Complicating reality are the hostile social and media representations of our undocumented population, which results in patterns of psychological disparagement, social exclusion, and dehumanizing entire sectors of the human family. A statewide system study conducted in the state of California revealed that citizen students in mixed status families where a parent or a caretaker was unauthorized face very, very similar challenges and concerns in navigating their college journeys as their undocumented counterparts. In other words, they pay a penalty for the statuses of loved ones, families, and others in their immediate family. As war and terror, unchecked climate change, and slow-moving geophysical catastrophes intensify globally, displaced persons, asylum seekers, and refugees are a growing population. I'm going to reflect briefly now on our refugee students. These students have to navigate unimaginable traumas, displacements, educational uncertainties, and barriers. Only 6% of refugee students around the world access higher education. For a host of reasons, beginning with war and terror, interrupted schooling and experiences, liminal residencies, displaced persons are much less likely to access our higher education institutions. Recently, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees has called for a 15 by 30 target. That is to increase the enrollment of our refugee students in higher education to 15% by 2030. In January 2023, the current U.S. administration announced the launch of private sponsorship for refugees through the so-called Welcome Course. As a result, in the coming months and years, public and private colleges will have better opportunities to sponsor our refugee students. They will be able to come to the U.S. as refugees with a pathway to citizenship. As such, our institutions will be seeing a grow in the enrollment of refugee students in our higher education world. What then are we to do? Begin by recognizing and acknowledging the presence and immense potential of immigrant origin students across our campuses. Many campuses today have become immigrant-serving campuses and are likely to continue to be so in the coming years. These students are sustaining campuses that would otherwise be experiencing declines in college enrollments. Collect data on your immigrant as part of routine demographic, experiential data collection. Work towards the disaggregation of data and the tailoring of services to their unique experiences. Recognize immigrant origin student diversity. Again, quoting Neruda, Muchos Somos. We contain multitudes. These students overlap with many categories that our colleges and universities are serving. First-generation students, Latinx students, Asian students, Black students, but they're also distinct and too often invisible. Recognize that they have complex, intersecting needs that should be addressed, should be recognized, should be served. Recognize the exceptional resiliency and resourcefulness of our immigrant origin students. Many have overcome extraordinary barriers to reach higher education, juggle many, many challenges as they navigate family, work, politics, and the higher education journey. Provide training to counselors, administrators, educators, and your communities about this significant growing student population. Foster spaces of belonging and inclusion that recognize and embrace immigrant origin students in all their complexity, in all their beauty, in all they have to offer. Mass migration and demographic change are, under the best of circumstances, destabilizing and generate disequilibrium in receiving, transit, sending, and returning nation states. The pandemic has added a level of suffering, uncertainty, and confinement to today's immigrant journeys. Catastrophic migrations produce multiple additional layers of distress. The forcefully displaced undergo violent separations and carry the wounds of trauma. The outright rejection of unwanted refugees, of asylum seekers, of unauthorized immigrants compounds trauma. In many countries of immigration, de facto and de jure policies are forcing millions of immigrant and refugee families to live, in the words of Roberto Gonzalez, live in the shadow of the law. When immigrants and refugees manage to settle in new nation states the world over, today they meet distrust, fear, xenophobia, hate crimes. Immigration is the frontier pushing against the limits of cosmopolitan tolerance in the modernist nation state. Immigration intensifies the general crisis that my colleague Pedro Noguera has called the crisis of connection. And the flight from the pursuit of our inherent humanitarian obligations to the welfare of others. Beneath the ruins of the ethic of rights and protection we're seeing today, for the weakest among us, when, as Hannah Arendt wrote, quote, "The weakest members of the human family are excluded and persecuted," we need to seek the tools forged by Hannah Arendt, Paul Ricoeur, and so many others to excavate the remains of a humanitarian ethic and begin the project of retraining hearts and minds, especially younger ones, for democracy in the context of demographic change, climate change, and super diversity. We need to convert a dread of the unfamiliar other into solidarity, admiration, empathy, and a democratizing desire, in the words of the great Danielle Allen, to talk to strangers. To move beyond our current atavism, we must cultivate the humanistic ideal to find oneself in another, as Paul Ricoeur put it, to find ourselves in the refugee, in the asylum seeker, in the forcefully displaced, in the undocumented. We, in higher education, have our work cut out for us. Muchas, muchas gracias.
Please welcome to the stage ASHE 2023 Conference Attendee Engagement Committee co-chairs Drs. Laila, McCloud, and Judy, Marquez, Kiyama.
Chancellor Suárez-Orozco, we're going to call you right back up. Don't leave yet. Thank you so much, Chancellor Suárez-Orozco, for your insightful and thoughtful remarks this morning. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your knowledge. And thank you for the reminder, the call to reflect on our responsibility to and for and with undocumented immigrant and refugee communities, to the land, to the environment, and to one another. We're so appreciative of you being here with us today. Good morning, everyone. I'm Judy Marquez Kiyama. We're so excited that you're here with us this morning. We want to briefly share with you some of what the Attendee Engagement Committee has been working on over the last few months. As you heard earlier, we are part of the inaugural conference committee, and we have been working to ensure that all members of ASHE, whether you are brand new to ASHE or a longtime member, that you feel engaged and are engaged in meaningful ways that are also very inclusive. This year, we've worked to align our efforts with the conference theme and have encouraged you to think about engaging in sessions and events that connect us to purpose, politics, and practice. We've encouraged you to think about the following questions as you intentionally engage with this year's conference.
What is one session or event related to your own purpose and scholarship that you're excited about? What is one session related to the political landscape that may impact your research and scholarship? And lastly, what is one session new to you that you would like to attend that can influence your practice? Additionally, we have hosted a series of webinars leading up to the annual conference called Welcome Wednesdays for individuals who are either new to the ASHE community or looking for ways to get connected. One of our aims is to create spaces that cultivate community both during the conference and outside of and beyond conference sessions. During the conference, we hosted a welcome reception, a newcomers breakfast, and a reception for newly tenured and promoted members. Finally, we want to thank the amazing Attendee Engagement Committee, Liliana Diaz-Sotolucan, Dana Michelle Harris, Shauna Oates, and Heather Schotten. Enjoy the remainder of the conference. We look forward to connecting with you. Enjoy the rest of your day.